Okay, we are now live. My mic is being detected. That is working fine. Um, so let's get on with today's Techie Tuesdays. So we'll leave it for a few seconds and then we'll run through. Yeah. Ba-ba-bum. Okay. I think we'll start the Techie Tuesdays now. So hello everyone. Welcome to this week's Techie Tuesdays. Hope you've all had a good Christmas break and a happy New Year. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at a deep dive into static analysis, and we'll also be touching on points of like reverse engineering, but only specifically static analysis and not dynamic. I won't be doing any deep debugging this time, mainly because I'm going to be using Ghidra, which does have a debugger. However, with Ghidra, I'll just be using the uh, not the dynamic analysis rather than just straight up the code browser, as you can see here. So Ghidra is an open source it's an open source sort of C code analysis tool. It has a debugger in it. I haven't used it yet, but I know for most people who are doing reverse engineering and dynamic analysis, they're either using an automated sandbox, or if they're doing it manually themselves, they're using x64dbg. So I don't know too much about the debugger on Ghidra, but we'll be doing specifically static analysis. So the reason why I chose Ghidra in this case is because SentinelOne actually uses their own adaptation of Ghidra, as it is open source and it was published by the NSA. So SentinelOne for their static engine is powered by Ghidra, and they've effectively made it completely automated from their side, and they'll do all of the hard work for you in checking for potentially malicious imports, like commonly seen just patterns for obfuscation. Um, and I think we're just going to get straight into it. So I have found a very recent sample of the Agent Tesla malware. Um, Double check, yeah, it is Agent Tesla. Uh, really common at the moment, written in C++, well, 43% likely, and matches 5 YARA rules. It's a very loud, stompy malware. And I decided to do some static analysis just now. So before I put it into Ghidra, I wanted to make sure I knew what I was looking at and what language it was going to be written in. And you can see it's written in binary, so it's most likely C. But then you can also see that it's an installer, so it's not necessarily, I wouldn't think it's necessarily a file dropper, but because it's not trying to almost Trojanize the installation process, I think it's probably it's almost social engineering, Trojanizing the reverse engineering process, because it's sort of taking a look at it. It effectively stops people from um, it when you're using an installation framework like nullsoft, with that, like choose your directory to install, stuff like that. It's very likely that no one will fall for it. However, if you were to Trojanize it, and it's like hiding away and it's trying to drop files and stuff, then things like SentinelOne might pick it up, or just any sort of EDR solution, or you might end up marking it as a false positive as well, even if it does come up as a threat on the after you do the nullsoft scriptable install. So you can see I'm using Detector Easy here. This is an open source tool. Got it on GitHub. Brilliant tool. Microsoft linker, overlay binary, so it's written in most likely C. And then you can see it's on Malware Bazaar is actually written in C++ most likely, and it's specifically Windows malware. Um, so because it's written in C and C++, we can open it up in Ghidra. So I've actually analyzed the code using Ghidra, and I disabled the PDB because I was getting loads of errors with it. And so let's have a look at the main function. So everything that I'm going to be doing now is what Sentinel-1 does automatically. Um, it will likely it likely imports it into its own instance of Ghidra, which is all hosted on the agent. The Sentinel-1 agent will sort of analyze the file as it's being ran, so it doesn't need to upload it to a sandbox and take away all of your network bandwidth. Um, so first, Sentinel-1 will open up, like I have, open up the exe file. So this isn't actually being ran. This is simply just the assembly code in the middle here, which has been analyzed from binary, which is these hex values here. So from binary into hex, and then from the hex is being sort of reimagined in assembly. And then Ghidra has come along and sort of tried to make its own interpretation in C of what that code might have looked like. Now, obviously, it's not going to look almost anything like it actually would, but it's the most sort of dumbed down version approach of pretty much everything that's happening. So before we look at anything, let's have a look at, we have to start with the main function. So we go into functions, and you can see entry, and then for some reason the functions are all folded up. So you can obviously see that this is definitely the main function, or the entry point, should I say, where a bunch of like loads of different variables are being created. And if we scroll down, I remember seeing you could see some Windows directory stuff. So obviously these are all functions, and we have to analyze them ourselves. But if you scroll down far enough, I think you're able to see. So we can see some get Windows extension. I'm not 100% sure what that function does. Yes, you can see get Windows directory, so you can see that this exe itself is specifically a installation program. You'll probably see that there's not really a whole lot of code. There's really not a whole lot to look at the moment, because this is you're pretty much just looking at the installation program itself. So I've actually noticed that Sentinel-1 hasn't picked up in static analysis this file. I wonder if we scan for threats, it might iterate through again on the static analysis, and it says it's clear. It's quite surprising actually, but it's also unsurprising in the way that Sentinel-1's looking at the installer and not the actual dropper, or not the actual agent Tesla malware itself. So let's see if we can dump the exe. I'm not too sure if I have the right tools for this. So I'm going to try and run the tool dynamically. This is coming out of static analysis, and I want to do some static analysis on the actual program itself. So I'm not too sure if this will work, because I've used KS Dumper Client. This is just a dumping tool. I've used KS Dumper Client for I've used it only with .NET applications, which that in itself is a massively jumbled up sort of framework if you want to reverse engineer it. There are lots of broken tools you have to, there you go, detect a malicious running process. So we can also actually download the threat file on Sentinel-1 in the management console. So let's try and refresh this, and you can see, there you go, boom. And how was it detected? So yeah, as soon as I ran it, it was like, oh, I was doing all of this stuff. Let's have a look in virus total. So you can already see that it's been detected by loads of different engines, but that's besides the point. We already know that it's vulnerable, it's malicious. But let's see if we can use the KS dumper client to dump the exe file, and then we can use some static analysis on that exe. I'm not too sure if this will work. Let's see what processes it's created, because I know it's currently running in the background. So this ihggei.exe, let's see if it makes any network actions. Okay, so that's weird. There should be some network actions, which probably means that it probably was actually a packet, and I was wrong about how it's an installation, trying to fetch it from a client of some sort, or like a malicious endpoint. So let's try and see if we can drop this. Let's see if we can dump this. This would be really interesting. There we go. That's cool. So let's go back into downloads, and I'm going to put that there. Then I'm going to go back into Ghidra and see if we can analyze this statically. So whilst this is being analyzed, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. And if you're watching this after the stream has finished, you can still comment or contact us, and we can help you out with certain things. If you have any questions, this is the stuff that I love doing. So let's analyze it, and let's let Ghidra eat up the VM. So whilst that's happening, let's have a look at. Let's close that down. So for KS dumper to actually work the way that I dumped it, there needs to be you need to basically spoof a vulnerable driver. So I wouldn't do it on a production environment. I'd definitely have it completely segregated from your network, because I mean I don't know a whole lot about drivers. That's why I did it on a VM. But luckily it was all open source, and I haven't seen anyone do anything wrong about it. But I know certain malwares are actually mount drives sometimes, which can be quite scary. So we have dumped this file. Let's go into functions, and let's go into the entry point. And what function does it call next? So it's probably not security initiate cookie. It's probably this function here. So this is the actual malware itself. So everything that's happening here is causing these threat indicators to trigger. Sort of linking static and dynamic analysis here, but this is what Sentinel-1 has, because it hasn't done a static analysis, it hasn't detected what's going on here. And you're probably, I'm not too sure about the imports part, but if you can see that it imports kernel functions, so that would be detected by Sentinel-1 in the static engine. Anything that tries to raise kernel functions, you need to really trust, and it needs to be signed with something that signed with a company that is not going to get compromised at all, because you need to seriously trust the authors of a program if they're trying to raise kernel functions. So I thought that was a really interesting deep dive into static analysis. I wonder if we can. I wonder for the next video, have a look at something like lateral movement. But before we end it, I just want to give some more examples of what static detection would look like. So let's go into threats and change this to last year. And let's type in Dinkum. Okay, Dinkumware is not showing up. Let's have a look at the static engines. So we can filter by detection engine on Sentinel-1 by on threats, and let's go into static AI. And there has been some other static threats that I have analyzed before, in which Sentinel-1 did the whole Ghidra shenanigans and noticed that it was importing type of library called Dinkenware, and Dinkenware basically allows C++ and C code to much more closely communicate with sort of Windows internals and sys internals and stuff. So uh, it's, it's not itself a dodgy framework or library, but it is used very commonly by malware authors. But the actual, I think it might be to do with the Yara signatures of Dinkenware if you look in the import section. But that's besides the point. Let's see if we can see anything about indicators. Oh, so you can also see that there is if there's encrypted or compressed data with high entropy or high obfuscation, that can be detected as a potentially malicious or suspicious piece of software. Also signs of packing as well. So you can see that in this specific detection, the binary contains abnormal section names, which can be an indication that it's created with non-standard development tools, which likely means there was someone sitting down for many hours trying to create a very harmful piece of software. You can also see suspicious shellcode API. I think this might be to do with dumping strings. So one thing with static analysis is that you can dump all of the stored strings inside of a file. So if you were to see stuff like Bitcoin wallets, Ethereum wallets on a program that has non-standard development tools and imports Dinkenware and tries to raise kernel functions and stuff, and it also has cryptocurrency wallets stored in the strings, then it's probably some sort of ransomware. But I think that's everything for now. I'm not too sure if we can see anything about Dinkenware libraries, but I think that's it so far. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to comment them. You can also message me on LinkedIn as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for watching.